The Eminence in Shadow is not funny. The plot sucks. It's just like any other isekai. Well, buckle up, Buttercup. I'm about to tell you guys how this damn show is funny. For some reason, a show that's based on the comedic irony, for some reason, people out there don't get it. So for this video, we're gonna go over the Eminence in Shadow Season 2, Episode 4, Mask of Falsehood. It's kind of amazing. Like, when I think of One Punch Man, I feel like it has one of the best fan bases out there. People get it. And the thing that they get is the comedic humor. You get the main character. He's clearly there as a joke. And then you have all these other characters. You have heroes out there. They are all making fun of the hero cliche. They have all of these tropes that they use. When it comes to the Eminence in Shadow, they do such a good job in creating the atmosphere like it's a real plot, like there's real danger, like there's real tension, that it comes off as basic. But when you dig down a little bit deeper and then you look into the characters and the dynamics between them and the tropes themselves, you'll see exactly where the humor is. The anime does such a good job at grounding the anime. It's like Chainsaw Man. When Mappa created the Chainsaw Man anime, the manga is heavily humor based. And that's the same thing for the Eminence in Shadow too. If you ever read the manga, the humor in the Eminence in Shadow in the manga, it's a clear focus from the jump. This is a joke. We are writing with these jokes. Just like the Chainsaw Man anime, they had to ground it and make it more cinematic, so you have a more chill vibe. The characters feel more realistic, that you could relate to more. That they're just not some joke every single time that undercuts every single serious, like, legitimate moment. The Eminence in Shadow is literally the same thing. You have character tropes, which any other show that is not even comedy based has, but in this case, they use the irony behind it to make it funny. So yeah, Episode 4 of the Eminence in Shadow is a great episode to talk about because the funny part of this is about the setup. The setup is funny. The premise is funny. The John Smith espionage with Yukime is funny. The whole show is based on comedic irony. It is not a slapstick anime, though sometimes they do a simple setup punchline. And they usually use Scale and Poe and Sid in those types of humor for those types of jokes. You guys remember in one of the previous episodes where Sid sent Alexia fighting or whatever, and then he had to stop and tell Scale and Poe that he needed to take a that he needed to take a dump? That is upfront humor. So before I start explaining more about the comedic irony in this episode, so you have to ask yourself, what is comedic irony? It's literally what you expect, something happens out of that expectation. It's when situations occur that we all understand, that we expect something, but something else happens. And that is comedic irony. What are all the ironic things that happen in this episode? So it all starts with the setup, intro, the hook of the episode. So at the beginning of the episode, you have these bandits hired by the main bad guys. I'm just going to say main bad guy. There's some like corporate alliance crap, whatever, right? So you have the main villain, which ends up being the competing corporation that's battling out with Mitsugoshi, their corporation. They even have their own banks, their own currencies that they're competing with each other. So at the beginning, these bandits for hire are sent out to go to Mitsugoshi to basically take them out, physically take all their secrets, take everything. So that sets up this corporate espionage kind of theme. Is the theme about business, profit. So you have this underlying theme that connects to reality. There's a lot of parallels between that to what's happening on today. So these bandits find out the Mitsugoshi girls are actually Shadow Garden, and Shadow Garden shows up and they just whack them. And then that takes us to our next scene to basically explain how Sid became John Smith. So with Sid in the previous arcs, he has like all these bucket list things that he wants to do to role play as something, right? In the most recent arc, what did he want to do? He wanted to be mundane man. And in the last arc with the vampire, instead of showing up last, fight the boss, it kind of tricked us with one episode to make it anticlimactic. At the end of the day, it still ended up being a last boss fight. But the theme of this episode and this arc seems to be about corporate espionage, stealing trade secrets from each other. You have this theme of business and this kind of like hardcore capitalism. So the theme of the episode, it's also about counterfeiting, because Sid's bright idea is to eventually counterfeit the money. But what they do at the beginning of the episode is foreshadow that in a scene with Skeleton Poe and Sid. Because Skeleton Poe they're riding out with this Mitsugoshi drip, and all of a sudden the tape on the shirt falls off. And it ends up being a knockoff. So that's a clear foreshadowing for what's to come later in the episode. And here Sid, he starts to explain to everyone why Shadow Garden is going a little bit too far with their Mitsugoshi business. And this right here already sets up the comedic irony between Sid and Shadow Garden. You have this motif of Shadow Garden being oblivious, Rose being oblivious, Sid being oblivious. Mitsugoshi is literally there as a financial corporation run by Gamma, Alpha, Shadow Garden, or Shadow. But Shadow, Sid, he doesn't think that way. All this is just role playing to him. So he thinks that this is actually their business, that it's not really for him. And we saw this in the previous season where he steals the gold from Gamma, but in reality, it's his money anyways. So that, guys, that is comedic irony right there. So the plot that's building up right now for Sid to feel a certain way about Mitsugoshi. Mitsugoshi is out here and they're taking tons of market share. They're battling out with these other corporations, pissing everyone off. And for some reason, Shadow thinks that this is not the right way to do it. So that sets up John Smith. So what he wants to do is go undercover as John Smith to help take down these businesses. He wants to take down Shadow Garden and this other corporation that they're basically competing against. So the irony here, it's setting up that Sid wants to take down Shadow Garden and take down these other companies. Then he wants to take down the company that takes down Shadow Garden so he could rebuild Mitsugoshi in his own vision. So it's a whole roundabout way of how he wants to do it. You guys kind of see the irony in that? What he actually ends up doing, Shadow Garden always thinks that this is actually the best plan because Sid is so smart that he set up this whole thing to play out this way. So in some way, some fashion, we realize if we go by how everything has happened up to this point, whatever Sid does as John Smith, Shadow Garden will see it as helping them in some way. And there you create this irony that is funny. I don't see how people can't see that, how funny that is. So the setup itself is funny. The plot is already funny. I don't know what else to say, guys. So Sid as John Smith, he goes to meet up with Yukime, who is this talking animal, this therianthrope creature like Delta, which the episode will use later to kind of be a central part of this arc, because this arc is about therianthropes. I hope I'm saying that right. We don't know Yukime's true aims just yet. We just know that the fat guy that hired those bandits to try to steal secrets from Shadow Garden, Mitsugoshi, the true boss behind all that is Gatan. And he is the main boss of this arc, and he's another therianthrope. So now at the beginning of this episode, we know who are the bad guys, what they're trying to do, who's going to help Sid take down Mitsugoshi and these other businesses. It's going to be Yukime. And Yukime is telling John Smith all of this insight into who the main boss is. So eventually Sid, Scale, and Poe, they're out in the marketplace's shopping district. And there's this whole scene about two different currencies. One that's Mitsugoshi and one is that competing one with the fat guy and the therianthrope. So Shadow Garden's currency, their bank note is a lot more harder to replicate, to counterfeit. But the therianthropes, Gatan's business, their banknotes are a lot easier to counterfeit. So Sid comes up with this whole idea, counterfeit money to get rich. So how is that already comedically ironic? Literally in the previous episode, Sid was basically saying, I could go to the lawless city and steal all the money he wants. But he wants to go through this whole roundabout way because he wants to roleplay. He wants to have fun. So that eventually takes us to the scene between John Smith and Yukime, where they meet back up on the train once again, and the train itself is a whole trope. How many scenes have we seen with, like, when there's a camping scene where it's just all about character development? In the Eminence of Shadow, they always use this train scene to kind of set up this mysterious plot or something significant is about to go down. They did this with Sid and Alexia on the train right before Alexia got kidnapped. So this is where Sid as John Smith takes his incredible plan, Yukime, and he's like, look, we could get rich by counterfeiting those Therianthropes banknote currency. Yukime is like, if we counterfeit, they're gonna find us right away. They're gonna source it right back to us. These banknotes are only in the capital city, and so right away they're gonna find us, and especially if they counterfeit it too much, it's gonna be easy to trace it back to them. And this is where the irony will start to kick in, because how does John Smith feels in Sid's head, guys? He's thinking that this is the best plan ever. How the hell, Yukime, are you against this incredible plan of freaking counterfeiting money? So he starts to intimidate Yukime. He steps over Yukime, standing over here, super intimidating. And this is where the anime can do a really good job that the manga or the light novel can't really do, is they could create that environment, the tension. They could create the scene to feel more impactful, to feel like, holy shit, why the hell are you standing over me? Sid is gaslighting her into thinking harder about this counterfeit strategy. So Yukime is like, you know what? I can see how this works. And then she just goes on to explain, oh my gosh, this can work, because if we counterfeit the money so much, people are going to lose trust in these banknotes. What do the people do when they panic? They go to the bank to kind of reclaim their money. So what happens when you go to the bank and try to reclaim your money? When the banknotes themselves, they're supposed to represent what is backed by. Back in the day, our money or dollar bills were backed by gold. Now it's basically backed by our military. Ideally, those banknotes, the bank holds the real money. You go in there, you trade it in to get your gold back. So you guys can kind of see how this can collapse. So this is what Yukime is thinking. Oh my god, you could build distrust within the citizens. They go to the bank with this counterfeit money to try to reclaim their gold, their real coins. There's only a finite amount that's actually within the bank. And so it's going to make the bank and the corporation and all the financial things to collapse. When Yukime is explaining all this, Sid is like, what the hell? That sounds even better. But that's not what he was thinking, and that is the comedic irony. What Yukime is explaining is a legitimate kind of attack to take down these companies. But Sid isn't thinking that because he's a dummy. And so Yukime, once she's done saying all this, he's like, this is what you were thinking, right? Saying, yeah, everything you said was correct. And then poof, he's gone. So there's actually a lot of real life examples of these kind of things happening, and banks collapsing and all the stuff that they're making fun of. They're making fun of real life right now. And then this takes us to the Delta scene. And then we have Sid and Delta kind of catching up with some stuff. They show some Delta fan service. So they eventually link up later to go fight these bandits. And one of these bandits actually ends up being Delta's brother. If you've seen any show, if you've seen any anime, there are scenes like this all the time. Like, oh my god, John, is that you? Where have you been? It's one of those scenes like, oh my god, I haven't seen you in ages. I thought you were dead. I thought you were somewhere else. This is a trope scene. Reunited and it feels so good. This is a situation that we've seen over and over and over again. And when you come across your brother, your sibling, Delta's over here killing all the bandits except her brother. And her brother plays into the scene like, oh my god, Sarah, Zara, where the hell your name is that you? He starts to talk about how he is working for Gatan right now. But before he could explain really further, Delta absolutely kills him. She literally kills her brother like it was nothing, because he is nothing. So this is where Delta starts to explain, and this is where the comedic irony is, that in the Therianthropes, their culture, the head, he has a harem, so he has hundreds, if not thousands of kids. So Delta says something funny. He pulls a DJ Khaled and just says, another one. You can have another brother. Who cares if I kill this one? You know, in our culture, we don't accept weaklings like him. And that's comedic irony, right, guys? You expect that someone that's your family member, you know, blood is thicker than water. But in their culture, it's the opposite. It's Darwinism in their culture. If you're weak, we don't care. And plus, we can make hundreds of you. So everyone is basically related. Everyone has hundreds of brothers and sisters. And the top dog, the harem master, the king, he is the one that runs the show still. And Delta starts to try to convince it, hey, why don't you be my master? Why don't you be the head chief for the Therianthropes? I'll have your kids. You can have many kids. You can have hundreds of kids. Which is also kind of ironic too, because Sid is basically already in a harem. He's already like the head of a harem. So it's funny also that Delta is asking Sid to be the head of her village or the Therianthropes. That is ironically comedic. So I hope this video kind of points out directly, hey, in this scene, this is why it's ironic, and that's what makes it funny. So when it comes to the Eminence of Shadow, it's hard for me to see other people not getting it. Like, it is another basic isekai, but that is the point. The point is they create the same tropes, the situation that causes the irony that makes it funny. And that's what makes it different in the show. That's what makes like Chainsaw Man different. That's what makes One Punch Man different, because the character dynamics, the tropes that they create, and then the character dynamics that they create is what makes it funny. So that's all I really have to say for this video, guys. Do me a favor, guys. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Check out my blog at oldtakusin.com. I write reviews for this very anime, and I plan to do so for every single episode of the season. And I'm trying to write an additional post on the blog each week. I want to get to 2 YouTube videos per week, but it might take me a while to get there and get there consistently. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.